this, but so we're going through John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which applies to our particular culture that we're in because we really want to create leadership opportunities, which provides growth and peace of mind for 5,000 team members. So it's part of our culture, it's part of who we are, it's part of our identity. And if you guys remember, last week we kicked it off with the law of influence. So we talked about the law of influence. If you remember, there was 5 particular levels of leadership. If you remember, there was the position level, which we said is it's necessary, it's not necessarily bad, but if that becomes your end all be all, that you're leading based on position, that can be pretty dangerous because people follow you because they have to, not because they want to.
Correct.
Number 2 is the permission level, if you guys remember that. So this is when you've developed a relationship with people and they follow you because they want to, not because they have to. So that's the second level of leadership. The third level is production level. This is when you get stuff done. You're a producer, you are doing things, and people see you as successful. So they say, I want to follow you because you get stuff done. That's necessary in order to develop leadership skills and get people to follow you. If you can't get stuff done, people are kind of saying, why should I follow you? The fourth one is people developing, which is the level that you finally say, okay, I've done self-leadership. I've had to get into a position. I've had to learn how to develop relationships. I've had to get stuff done. Now I want to be in the people developing business. This is when you duplicate yourself. You're handing the baton off. You put yourself in a position now to compound what you've done so that you can really grow as a leader. And then the final one is just the culmination of all 4, which is the pinnacle level. Okay, this is when you get to have more and more influence and more impact because you've taken all 4 of these and you've compounded them over a long period of time. You've done them consistently, you've done them persistently, and you've shown that you wanted to grow in your competency as well as your values. And so it puts you in a pinnacle level. So that's what we talked about last week, which is nothing more than the law of influence. So today, what I want us to talk about is what John Maxwell talks about, the law of the lid. Okay, the law of the lid. And all that means is that how well we lead will determine how well we succeed. So think about that for a minute. How well we lead will determine how well we succeed. If you become a poor leader, you're not going to have much success. If you have become a good leader and a great leader, then you're going to have tremendous success. So there's a correlation there between those two. And John says everything rises and falls on leadership. Okay, so everything rises and falls on what I would even say good leadership. Okay. So what do you guys think about those 2 statements? First one is how well we lead determines how well we will succeed. And then everything rises and falls on good leadership. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do that based on how we lead will ultimately, it's definitely going to work congruently because at the end of the day, if you're not leading correctly or effectively, no one else will be able to follow effectively. So it all kind of starts with the top, and then it's how you proceed to teach and develop and groom people. It's like I look at even in our situation here where if Dave didn't do a good job at teaching me how to close loans, we'd never probably see a loan closed by me. So it ended up being a disaster. And then I probably wouldn't be here right now. So, there's a lot of different things that play into good leadership, which leads to the follow through of success.
Yeah, it's a good word, Dan. What about you, Tom? What are your thoughts on those comments? How well we lead determines how well we succeed, and everything rises and falls on good leadership or bad leadership.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. If leader, obviously the leader is there to lead, convince, others to to want to do what needs to be done. So if nobody's convincing them to do that, either somebody else will step in and convince them to do elsewhere, or things won't get done. So I think, yeah, that makes sense. And then, yeah, on the rise and fall, I mean, if there's success in the group, obviously it's going to go back to, it's obviously teamwork, team effort, but it's going to go back to the strong leadership. But if that success isn't there, it's the leader didn't direct it, the leader didn't make it happen.
Yeah.
And it's, yes, it does fall on others in a way, but the start point is the leader didn't
Yeah.
get it done.
That's true.
And the leader's responsibility is to be the first one to take responsibility, right?
Mhm.
We did well. Okay, great. That was team. If we failed,
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's me, right? So, it all comes back to, okay, we failed. I take ownership of that. And in fact, I was watching a interview with one of the, I think it was like a Fox News guy that got laid off, but it was really encouraging to hear him say, when I look back at some of the things that I believed or did, he said, I think I just was wrong. And just to hear that come out of his mouth, I thought, man, my respect for him just went up.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
actually willing to say, I think it was just wrong. And so, he was willing to take ownership of it and just not try to like sugarcoat it or soft sell it or just be like, yeah, it was wrong. So,
Interesting.
so the law of the lid just says those two things. There's two things about leadership which are really, really important for you to determine whether it is you're going to have success. You have competence
Mhm.
and good values. Okay. So you could be a leader and have really good competence. I mean, you could become like a really good commercial finance guy. You could start to become really competent in understanding skills around leadership, but you don't have values. And so all of a sudden people go, man, he's really good at understanding leadership. He just doesn't really have values that he's, living up to. So there's really no foundation for the basis for his leadership. Now you could also have really good values and not have the competency for leadership skills. So the two go hand in glove in order to have that combination of the two to have successful. You got to have leadership competence. Okay, that just takes time and actually takes intentionality because you got to be willing to learn and grow, which means you've got to be doing things.
Yep.
And then you've got to have a value system that you say, hey, this is what we live by, it's right and wrong. This is up and down. This is good and bad. We consider that not okay versus okay, right? There has to be a value system. We're not willing to compromise on, lies and et cetera, right? So those two have to go together in order to have a good foundation for leadership. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, no,
I-
that makes a lot of sense. Cause yeah, it's, if you're leading and without values, then yeah, that's, I mean, you probably could lead, but you're not going to lead to a very good place.
Yeah.
And I think that's obvious. That's probably one of the things that would probably make you an ineffective leader too, because that's where people are like, oh, I don't like, people with good values will see that and say, I'm not going to follow. I don't like that. But yeah, no, competence makes sense. But I still have that list from the other, I'm trying to remember the name of the book, the leadership challenge. Yeah, and competence was in the top 4, but it was at the bottom, and honesty was at the top, which I think honesty goes under values. So that one is, I think that good values is the strong one, is
It is.
It's also a point to make, like, you could be a great competent performer, but then you could be a terrible culture fit. So it's like, would you rather have someone that's a high performer and terrible culture fit, or would you rather have someone that's a culture fit but can learn and build the competency? So you have to think about both perspectives. So
Exactly, Dan. And it's been proven time and time again that if you have call it good producers versus great producers, and you have this team that you've built, you'll actually go further as a
Yeah.
group than you would with just the kind of A players that are just, solo thinkers,
Siloed, yeah.
really part of the team. So it's a really good thing to remember for us. Team goes much further with the culture. So if you want to, if you won't go higher, so think about this. We talked about this. This is the law of lid. Like you're not going to bring your team up under you any higher than you are.
Yep.
So remember, we talked about like if you're a 5, you're going to be bringing up 3s and 4s. Okay. And so you're always saying, well, could I get to a 6? Good. Well, then you're going to get 5s and 4s and 5s, right? To move up to a 6. So if you're a 7, you're going to get 5 and 6, right? So what you're trying to do is to continue to grow your leadership skills, which is active. It's a verb. And you're learning and doing.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, you'll just see, oh, okay, I'm growing my leadership. So then that's what's going to get more and more quality people. That's why we have to keep growing, because if we're going to attract the best, we have to become better.
Yeah.
Otherwise they're not going to come over. We're always going to complain, why can't we get the best people? It's like, well, it's us. We have to be the best. Otherwise people are going to say, if I'm an 8, I'm not going to go follow a 6. I'm looking for a 9 and a 10.
True.
So that's the part of the law of the lid is, as I stretch, then this is going to give more gap for me to pull more people up and attract, better and better people at the end of the day. So we have to, you guys know, I talk about this all the time. I'm like, I got to step it up. I've got to raise the bar in order to stretch myself so that I can really say, hey, I can help us grow because I've been stretching myself to get better, so we can get better, because otherwise there's just no point for me to ask you guys to go higher, right?
That's true.
So we just have to keep raising. We just have to kind of incrementally raise that bar. Go, okay, I think I can stretch a little bit further here, so that I can have more impact, influence for the next people to come up. Okay. So the question is, as a leader, one of the things you have to ask yourself, the question is, am I a lid lifter? Okay. Am I a lid lifter? So daily, am I asking myself the question, am I lifting my lid? Am I stretching? And then am I also, with the people that I am having influence on, am I also challenging them to lift their lid? Lift their lid. Okay. Hey, you can do better. We can stretch that. Can we go a little bit higher? Could we push further? Right. Am I helping people lift? Okay. That's a question we have to ask ourselves. Is my daily kind of interactions, am I always sort of stretching myself? Because I have to first be a personal lead. I have to lead myself, like if I, kind of go, hey, you ought to really, start working out. It's like, well, do you work out? Well, no, but you should. I just can't get myself out of bed. Okay, well, don't think I'm going to follow you on that one.
Yeah, right.
So we have to be willing to say, well, I can get myself out of bed and do that stuff. I block numerous times out during the week that I am almost daily doing leadership study. Okay. So it's just part of my habitual thing, because I want to become a better leader. So I just have to spend time doing that thing if I'm going to get better at it. Okay. Yep. So we have to be just stretching ourselves first to go, am I growing? Not perfect, but I'm growing in it. And then I'm going to ask other people, hey, I want you to come up a little bit. Okay.
Agreed.
That's part of the challenging the process, which is helping people lift their lid. So that's the question you ask yourself. Am I a lid lifter? Okay.
Right.
So the second thing is, do I add value every day? Okay. Am I adding value every day. If I walk into my job, if I walk into my relationships, if I walk into any kind of situation, am I trying to add value? Okay, when I became an elder at the church, one of my main questions I just asked myself was, how can I add value? Like, what can I do to add value the way that I can add value? Okay. I'm not, the other guys, I'm me. So what is it that I'm going to contribute to this team that can help add value, And there were a lot of things that I eventually got called on to. Hey, could you do this? Yes, I'll take that on. I'll add value. And so I was always asking, how can I add value? Like, or what could be helpful? What do you see as success at the end of this? What are you not? What are you asking for? What are you not asking for? Right. Just, I'm asking, how can I add value? I'm not saying what can I take away from this and how can I gain everything from it. And so one of the ways I added value is I would just look for little ways to go, hey, could I speak into that? Or I would write letters actually to every one of the elders. I just write them a letter and say, hey, here's something I see in you. And I just noticed it in this last meeting. It really had an impact on me and I wanted you to know. I remember there was a guy, Michael Tucker, and I remember he was such a successful guy. And I remember driving in to VBS with our kids and I saw him like outside doing like what would be considered kind of a grunt job. And I was so moved by it. It was like, wow, what a servant. Like it's not above him to go out and sit there and hold a sign, there's no accolades there. But I wrote him a letter and I just said, I want you to know how much impact that had on me. Like that really influenced me to show like, wow, I really need to be a better servant, So that was just a way that I can add value. And so that's the way you have influence and impact on people's lives. So just asking, am I adding value today? Doesn't have to be huge, right? Yeah. Just has to be like, am I adding some value, right? Could be simple, but that's a question you can ask yourself. Is I'm adding some value to the person I'm interacting with today or not? Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes like we foresee like adding value as it has to be some extravagant like game moment where it's like, sometimes it's the simplest little thing, like add value by maybe relieving someone from holding the sign for give them a chance to go to the restroom. Like it's adding value in some different way that could be so small, but it means so much.
Yeah, exactly. Just incremental value snapshots. When you walk into the store, Dan, you just look at somebody and you look at their name tag, say, hey, Jenny, thank you. Right. Yeah. And Jenny goes, oh my gosh, somebody called me by my name. Yeah. So real simple things add up over time to add value, but it doesn't have to be huge. But actually, small things mean a lot of times big things. I remember a lady called me years ago and she was a little bit flustered with someone at the church and she was looking for my advice. And I remember saying to her, and I didn't realize it had this much impact, but I said to her, I said, I'm going to say something to you and it might sting a little bit, but somebody asked it for me once. And I said, do you want to be right or do you want to get it right? And she got really quiet. She's like, well, I don't know. I need to think about that. Okay. And it was just a simple question. We didn't have a long conversation, but I was trying to challenge her a little bit to think maybe differently about it because she was getting really mad at somebody that I don't think had done anything necessarily wrong. Okay. Well, I saw her the other day at church and she said, I will never forget that question you asked me. It's because I honestly wanted to punch you in the face when you first asked me because I didn't said I knew it was right. I just didn't want to hear it. Yeah. And she goes, but it was a great question and I needed to hear it. Right. She said, I ended up changing the way she goes, I think about it all the time. I didn't think it was a big deal. I was just like, I'm just going to ask a question. And I was like, this is all I'm asking. So it's just small little things that we can try to do daily. The other one is just to produce results, right? Another way to grow in your leadership is just to produce results. I was reading in the New Testament. He said, if you're faithful with small things, you'll be faithful with big things. Okay. And I thought to myself, I'm like, that's really true. If you're given a little task and you do it really well, chances are you're probably going to do really well on the big things. But if you can't do well on the small things, chances are you're probably not going to do well with the big things, right? So you want to be faithful. That's one of our core convictions at our house, is I said, you need to be faithful in the roles that you take on.
Yeah.
I said, if you're given a role, finish it, do it well, and just, be faithful, show up. If you're asked to serve, show up on time. Don't have an attitude. Don't think, well, I'm doing you a favor. No, if you say you're going to do something, show up, do it the best of your ability, and be faithful, right? So we want to just be a person that you can rely on. That's how you're going to become a good leader. If people go, I can't rely on you, they're not going to go to you for leadership ask, right? So be faithful in what you're asking to. And the final thing on the law of the lid is just teach yourself to lead yourself. You have to grow in your self-leadership. I've got to grow in these areas. You got to work on it. And that's how you're going to be able to lift your lid as a leader. That's how I look back and I say to myself, what has been the greatest impact that has helped me grow in my leadership? It's a couple things. Number one, intentional time reading. Okay. Because readers are leaders. That's had one of the most impactful things for me. And then I have been very intentional about who I'm going to spend time with. Okay. Those two things have had the greatest impact on my leadership. Who I'm going to spend my time with is going to have the most impact. And what I'm putting in my head is going to eventually manifest into my heart and my hands. Okay. That's how you lift. That's how I've been able to lift my lid, because it challenges me every time I read something. I'm like, okay, that's an area I've got to grow. Now, how do I put it into action? So that's the law of the lid. Do you guys have any closing comments on that?
I think it's great.
Yeah, I like that one. And it's kind of, I guess it all revolves around, you can't lead somebody greater than where you are. You can't lead somebody to do more or something higher than what you're doing. So it's all kind of about little, am I a lid lifter, or do I add value? It's if you're focusing on those things, you're slowly going to step up your game and pull others up with you.
Yeah, it's good.
Also, the humble attitude of accepting that you're not perfect as a leader. So if you're going to expect a lot out of other people, you should expect a lot out of yourself too. And
yes,
will lead to the highest results. So.
Yes, 100%. You want to be really quick to say, I think I was wrong there. I need to grow. Okay. That's how you, it's actually how you create integrity, by the way.